let me first say welcome, boirum, bienvenidos. Mi amo Rose y mis parientes vinieron de Sarajevo. And what I just said was, my name is Rose, and my parents came from Sarajevo. And that language that I just spoke in is called Ladino. So Ladino, if you're a Spanish speaker, you would probably understand it, but think, well, it sounds a little strange. And that's because it's an old Castilian dialect. So it's equivalent to, if you know people who speak Yiddish, Yiddish is a dialect of German. And they're both, hi guys.
Hi. You speak my language.
Okay. So both languages are dialects, and they are written in, so it's written in Hebrew letters, and specifically Hebrew script called Rashi, and also called Solitario. So my parents were from Sarajevo. If you know, Sarajevo is from the old Yugoslavia, Bosnia, and they had been there in Bosnia for over 450 years. My family name is Papo. It's one of the original Sephardic clans, and they were the apothecaries. It's an old-fashioned type of pharmacist, and in Bosnia they were called atars. And so they had these stalls in the bazaar, right? And you would come and they would, you know, grind up things for you to make a medicinal thing. So the men made all the medicine, and the women were also there as healers, but on the spiritual side, they were doing the incantations, you know, and the brachas and so forth. So, you know, when I was growing up, it's like, well, we're from Yugoslavia, you know, and we speak Yugoslavian, but why are we speaking Spanish? It doesn't make sense. But my parents would be like, well, of course we speak Spanish. We're Jews. We're Jewish. And so from them, the Spanish was synonymous with being Jewish because they came from Spain. And that's what our little brochure here tells you the story of. So how did they get there? You know, well, they were there from the very beginning, from biblical times, because the Jews were mariners. So they were traders also coming down from Babylonia. They ended up in Iberia also as slaves, you know, and so you had generations and generations in Iberia, and they, at the time, got along very well with the Muslims that was there. So what they were speaking was the Hebrew, and then the local ancient Castilian, which is like listening to Elizabethan English. And of course, it was imbued with Arabic words. Now, what happened in 1492, and that's what we're going to see in this little video, it's just like 12 or 15 minutes, is that as the Catholics took over, and finally there was a lot of repression for a couple of 100 years or so in the 13th century, and leading up to finally the Edict of Expulsion. And when they left, when they had to make that terrible choice of either we're going to stay and have to convert to Catholicism, and if they're going to convert, maybe they would try to keep their faith secret, you know, or they would leave. And so when they left, they went in every which direction. They went, a lot of them, immediately to North Africa, so Morocco and Algiers and so forth. Some of them went across the way, a lot of them were in Catalonia, Barcelona, so they went straight across over to Sicily, you know, to Italy. And others, it went to the northern part, into Amsterdam. You know, the Jews were not allowed in England until the 1700s. So, but then they moved there too. And then a lot of them went in total other direction to the New World. You know, they were on the ships, they were mariners, they were navigators, and they went with Columbus and so forth, and they settled in the Caribbean. And then the Ottoman Sultan said, you're getting rid of your best people. I'll take them in. And he offered refuge, so a lot of people ended up in the Ottoman Empire, which was enormous at that time. And that's where my family's clan ended up. So Ladino ended up having Italian, certainly French. It started out as, you came in, missed my little thing. I gave you my bienvenidos, buyurun. So Turkish, Greek, Italian. There was a little bit of German because, of course, for Sarajevo with the Austro-Hungarian coming in, they started to. But in the earlier times, when they were feeling somewhat isolated, it's actually the rabbinic people, the clerics, knew about all, because they stayed in contact with the other scholars in Babylonia, because that's where the Jews were after they were kicked out of Jerusalem. They ended up in Babylonia for centuries. And so there was a lot of back and forth on the scholarly level. But for regular people, they were unaware that there were Jews in other parts that were speaking other languages. And those people were unaware of the Spanish Jews. So when somebody ended up in New York, and you had a Sephardic girl and an Ashkenazi boy getting together, and the grandma says, "Wow, do you speak Jewish?" "I speak Ladino." "What's that?" If you don't speak Yiddish, you're not Jewish. And to the point where you say Sephardic Judaism, well, it's no such thing. The Jewish religion is exactly the same. Everything is, you go to any temple and it's going to be exactly the same. The Torah is the same, the books are the same. What's different is the culture. So Sephardic is Mediterranean, and we have all those bold, fabulous flavors, and, castanets, and all that great music, and very Ottoman type of attire and customs. When I grew up, my mother would put a bowl of salad in the table, and we all dunked our forks and ate in there like that. We would practically be on the floor eating like that, because it's a holdover from an Ottoman culture. So, I didn't grow up eating brisket and, borscht. My girlfriends, when they went home from school, they were having sour cream and sliced bananas. I didn't know from this. My mother was cooking lamb. That's all we ate. Lamb and string beans cooked with onions and tomatoes and eggplant things and all kinds of wet vegetables. She made a fabulous dessert, a candy called dulce, made from the peels of oranges and watermelon rind and baklava, So it was Mediterranean, Italian, Turkish, Greek style food, Mid-Eastern. So for me, when I finally I was telling him the story of how the Sephardi Federation got going here in Palm Beach County, all of us, we knew the basics, but there's been so much research and so much new information coming out that we have all learned so much more about our culture and about our heritage, and we're doing everything that we can to preserve it, because unfortunately, through the multiple diasporas of, first of all, the Edict of Expulsion sent a lot of people underground, and the ancestry of that is that you have probably something like 20% of Spanish-speaking people all over the world who have forgotten that they have Jewish heritage. And with DNA and all kinds of other research and books and movies and films coming out, it's starting to become more aware, and people are having the choice again. Do I return to that? Do I just simply acknowledge it and realize that all of these funny customs that we did in our house were actually Jewish customs? But you had that loss, right, from that happening. And then you have the Holocaust. So what happened with the Holocaust is it severely, the percentage of Ladino speakers was enormous. So it really devastated the Sephardic aspect of Holocaust, the people that were murdered. So they were really devastated. It's been very, very hard to come back. But it is coming back, mostly in academia. But so what? Young people are learning about it, enjoying it, and speaking Ladino again, and the music is alive, and artists are making it their own and adding on modern things. So it's really been a thrilling time to know that you're Sephardic and enjoy it. And, I will just point at the back of this flyer, because technically what we're going to be learning about in the film, the Sephardim people technically are the ones that came from Spain. But the Sephardic style of the culture and heritage, the way of eating, the way they, the Sephardic, you step into a Sephardic shul, a kahil that we call, and the bima, where the rabbi is leading the service, is in the middle of the room facing the ark. It's not that way in Ashkenazi. It's just customs, It's not a law, There's one way to wrap up, the tefillin, and there's another way to wrap up the tefillin. It's this kind of thing. At Passover, they would not eat rice, Ashkenazi. Sephardim do. There's all kinds of historic, cultural reasons why. It doesn't matter. It's custom. We name children for the living. We're not afraid to do that. For us, it's an honor. They only name for people who have passed. It's custom. There's no difference in the religion or the religious practice. So I think we'll go ahead and watch the film. And then I do have a PowerPoint. I'll show you some pretty other pictures about food and architecture and tremendous amount of American history tied to the Sephardic heritage.
«1492. Un camino diferente». No hay muchos de nosotros que no conozcamos esta fecha, 1492. Fue el 3 de agosto de ese año cuando este hombre, Cristóbal Colón, salió en busca de una ruta comercial hacia el oriente. Sabemos que encontró algo más: el hemisferio occidental. Nuestra tarea no es hablar de lo malo y lo bueno que surgió con el descubrimiento que España llamó el Nuevo Mundo. Pero podemos decir que la razón por la cual hoy en día muchos de nosotros hablamos español se debe a este viaje. Pero hay algo que probablemente no saben. La misma semana en que Colón zarpó del puerto de Palos en España, alrededor de 200,000 españoles fueron expulsados del país simplemente por su religión. No eran católicos como la reina Isabel y el rey Fernando. Eran judíos que habían formado parte de la sociedad española durante 1000 años. Así que en la misma semana en la que Colón navegó hacia el oeste para traer la lengua que hablamos hoy en día, las familias judías de España huyeron hacia muchas direcciones: a Portugal, a Holanda y a muchos otros lugares. Pero la mayoría de estos españoles navegaron hacia el este, cruzando el Mediterráneo. ¿Y quién les dio la bienvenida a estos refugiados provenientes de la España católica intolerante? Los musulmanes. Este es un retrato del sultán turco otomano Beyazid II, quien gobernó un imperio que se extendió por todo el Mediterráneo, hasta la península balcánica. El sultán dio la bienvenida a los judíos y más de 150,000 poblaron estas tierras. Desde Estambul hasta Sarajevo, en ciudades como Tesalónica en Grecia, Bitola en la actual Macedonia, Sofía en Bulgaria, Belgrado en Serbia, el hermoso puerto de Dubrovnik en Croacia, y aquí en Sarajevo, en Bosnia y Herzegovina. Durante 450 años, desde 1492 hasta 1941, estos judíos vivieron entre musulmanes y cristianos, entre católicos y ortodoxos. Estos judíos españoles siempre serán conocidos como los sefardíes. Y sefarad en hebreo significa España. Ellos mantuvieron la lengua que habían traído de España, ladino o judeo-español. Aquí escuchamos a un orador ladino diciendo: el lenguaje ladino es en su mayoría español, con algunas palabras hebreas y otras palabras mezcladas.
Al mismo tiempo, los Sephardim, tanto en Andalucía como después en el Imperio Otomán, vivían en un país, en una cultura, en una sociedad multifacetal, multiconfesional, multiétnica, muchísimo más parecida a la nuestra.
Pero básicamente, si eres español, puedes entender ladino, ¿cierto? Se vestían con la ropa tradicional que habían traído de su tierra natal. Y cantaban sobre su amor hacia la tierra que los expulsó, porque nunca perdieron el amor por ella. Estos judíos españoles practicaron los oficios en los cuales se habían especializado en España. Eran doctores, farmacéuticos, comerciantes, abarroteros, hojalateros y talabarteros. Estos judíos españoles vivieron en la península balcánica mientras surgían imperios que después se terminaron, y permanecieron ahí conforme las fronteras cambiaron y los antiguos países volvieron a hacerse nuevos otra vez. Y un país completamente nuevo, Yugoslavia, surgió en 1918 después del final de la Primera Guerra Mundial. Estos judíos sefardíes sentían amor por su patria, pero también se sentían parte de las sociedades balcánicas. Pero había otros que no sentían lo mismo. Esta gente quería ver muertos a todos los judíos, a las mujeres, los niños y los ancianos. Todo empezó en abril de 1941. La Alemania nazi invadió Yugoslavia y la dividió. Los nazis pronto tomaron Grecia también. Más de 100.000 judíos de habla hispana en la península balcánica fueron fusilados. Encerrados en camiones con cámaras de gas. Asesinados en los campos de concentración croatas. O enviados a los campos de exterminio nazis en la Polonia ocupada por Alemania. Durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial, Turquía permaneció neutral y aunque los impuestos eran muy altos en contra de los no musulmanes, estos judíos fueron perdonados. En Bulgaria, el gobierno deportó a 12.000 judíos de Macedonia y la región griega de Tracia, condenándolos así a la muerte. Pero protegió a 48.000 que vivían en Bulgaria. La Segunda Guerra Mundial terminó en 1945. ¿Y qué sucedió con el patrimonio de 450 años de los judíos sefardíes en la península balcánica? Era solo una pequeña sombra de lo que había sido. El comunismo se impuso sobre gran parte de estas tierras durante 40 años. Y luego, en 1992, la guerra comenzó otra vez. Los serbios de Bosnia les dijeron a los ciudadanos de Sarajevo lo siguiente: las personas de religiones distintas no pueden vivir juntas. Pero los judíos españoles de Sarajevo no lo aceptaron. Recordaron que sus familias fueron expulsadas de su tierra natal en 1492 y que luego el odio étnico causó la muerte de la mayoría de ellos en 1941 y 1942. Pero ahora, en 1992, en el aniversario 500 de su expulsión de España, ellos dijeron: nosotros tomamos un camino diferente. Y no es el camino del odio. Ayudaron a la ciudad entera creando una organización no sectaria de ayuda humanitaria y trabajaron en la sinagoga junto a los musulmanes y serbios ortodoxos y los croatas católicos. Después de todo, esa es la razón de las democracias. Vivir juntos, ayudar a los demás y siempre decir no a los prejuicios. Esta historia española es la que nos pertenece a todos nosotros. Es una lección que nació hace 500 años y que tenemos que seguir aprendiendo hasta hoy día.
that's why I thought this one was a good choice for you guys. Because I have a lot of films that are, over an hour long, so it wouldn't really fit in. And this is really the message that we're trying to keep alive. A very interesting story that tags on to that end is that there was very specifically a Muslim family who had saved Jewish neighbors during the Holocaust. And then in the 1992 war, those people remembered and turned around and saved the Muslims and helped them actually emigrate to Israel with them, because there was a big, huge airlift to Israel. So my family was all involved with that. As I said, we had been there for 450 years. My name is spelled P-A-P-P-O, but it was originally P-A-P-O. And you could have even seen, there was one of the Papo names on one of those grave signs. So my family was caught up in the Holocaust. I never had grandparents. My mother and father escaped by the skin of their teeth and ended up in a displaced persons camp in Bari, just across the way. So they were in Bari for almost 7 years. My sister was born there, and it was only because they were able to make connection with a cousin in Long Beach, New York, who was willing to sponsor them, and it was a tremendous ordeal getting sponsored, and to come over here with literally nothing, and a 4-year-old who only spoke Italian, actually. So I really grew up with that sense of tremendous gratitude and love. I have this incredible photo of my father kissing the flag when he got his citizenship, and it just brings me to tears every time I see it or think of it. I might even be on that. I don't know if I have it on there. The interesting thing also about this same theme that we're talking about, that we're trying to get to, about tolerance, it was within the soul of those that originally were expelled. And I said many of them went to the Caribbean, and they were very successful there. They were among the slaveholders, yes, but they had a different kind of relationship. Things were different then. But they were successful in the Caribbean, and they saw when the colonies were starting to be developed. Of course, remember that there were already Sephardic Jews on the mainland because they came in with the ships, and they were also already in the whole Mexico City area as conversos. And so you had this kind of like dual thing happening where the ones that were in the Caribbean and establishing these successful congregations saw the potential of the colonies and seeded those original American, all the Jewish synagogues and congregations that started in the U.S. were Sephardic. The Ashkenazi, there were a few traders that came over early on, but they mostly came in after the 19th century, the 18th and 19th century. They were there from the 15th century, 16th century, and it was these Jews who were, because they were also landowners, and very interested in seeing that religious freedom, complete, total, true religious freedom, not just this type of Christian and that type of Christian only. That's not religious freedom. Some people here think that is, not here, but I mean in the country. They wanted to see that become part of the New World, and they were extremely influential in the writing of the Constitution. I have a link for a lecture that's just all about that traces, the names and the correspondence that happened, and that's why it was through their efforts and their support and pushing that we have that in the Bill of Rights. So how about some questions first, and then it may be that some of the slides that I have here might answer some questions too. Anything? Yes, sir.
So my background is Ashkenazi, and you were very clear, and it's so interesting about the Sephardic, where they came from and where it was mixed, and then they went east into that part of I don't even know, when our kids went to Croatia on vacation with their grandkids, they came back to talking about the food and the music, and I didn't know there were a lot of Jews that were hanging out.
Well, what the reason why, I'll tell you, is because when they mentioned those cities where Jews settled, those were the only cities that Jews were allowed.
Oh.
That's why the clans said, that's why Sarajevo became such a center, because in Croatia, we're talking about the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, I don't know how long these rules went. But they could trade in Croatia. They could stay overnight, but that was it. Then they had to, do your business and leave. There was only a handful of cities that they were allowed to really reside, and that's where they took root.
So my question is basically, where would I get information about the background of Ashkenazi? Was that all Europe, or did they come from?
Well, what happened is after Jerusalem fell, and they went into Babylonia. And so there were, and that's where you have on the back here, you see where it says spiritual ritual differences. It was a little bit cut off, but the Sephardic rite, because you had all these Jews that moved into Babylonia, which is, Iran, Iraq, and then there were still people who stayed behind in Jerusalem, and you had their schools, their scholars and their schools, and this is still early in the development of the religion, because the Torah, it's like, it's a historical document. It was handed down from God, from Ara, and there's always this, what came first, the Torah or the history, or was it prophetic, or was it was just written afterwards, from oral history. But so you had these two areas that were developing concurrently, and they developed their own code. So the religion became codified, because before then it was all oral. Right, so that's when they started really writing down the rules. They were interpreting the Torah and writing, like you say, the Tanakh, this is this. So you had a Babylonian Talmud and a Jerusalem Talmud, and they're both in use. So for whatever reason, the Ashkenazi tended to stick with the Jerusalem Talmud, but the majority of Jews all over the world use the Babylonian Talmud. And that's where the pronunciation of the Hebrew comes from. That's where a lot of these different customs were built in. So anyway, part of that migration through Babylon, then they kept going west. And so that's where they ended up settling into Poland and Northern Europe. And so they are Germanic. So they're Germanic in the speech because of Yiddish being, and same thing I was saying earlier, it's a dialect of German written in Hebrew letters, in the Hebrew alphabet, and then they're taking on the culture of their surroundings. It's potatoes and cabbage, and this is what, they didn't have the eggplant and the tomato and the garlic and the olive oil. They had what was grown there. And so you only had the traders who were going back and forth to all these different areas, and the scholarly people that were communicating with Rambam, with Maimonides, and the scholars in Greece and the scholars in Yugoslavia, And actually, the Jews, when they were all very happy in the Ottoman Empire, they wrote to their Ashkenazi communities through the rabbis, and they said, come here, we have relative freedom. Yes, we have to pay a tax for it, it's kind of like blackmail, but it works, we pay the Sultan and he protects us, and everybody has to leave us alone. And the communities were so huge, Salonika, everything closed on Sabbath. It was essentially a Jewish, like a little Jerusalem. A lot of these different places have these kinds of nicknames of, mini little Jerusalem. Yeah.
I have a quick thought, which is I think this story is so important because it shows how the effects of intolerance can lead to the destruction of an entire culture, right? Something that something that is a peril of fascism that I think we should keep in mind, especially in the world that we live in. So you had said that some of these traditions are being reclaimed, language is being reclaimed in academia. Are there specific institutions or universities where a lot of that work is happening?
Yes.
And where are those?
Well, actually, I think that I have, like, on the front here, the University of Washington. So I mentioned earlier that, you had this influx from the Caribbean, moving into the colonies, establishing the original communities. You had the influx of conversos coming up into New Mexico and the Rio Grande. And then you had the 18th century migrations. They were running away from being conscripted into World War I. And those came to the Northeastern. So Seattle is a huge area. Chicago has a huge, we have it here. FAU has a wonderful Sephardic studies program. And then the other aspect is that you still had all of the Jews that were staying in Babylonia. So now they're there for thousands of years in Iran. And they're not speaking Spanish. They're not speaking Yiddish, German. They're speaking Judeo-Arabic. But the food is the same. What's different is the spice. So they're still making the same kind of patties and special stews, but they're adding in the spices of those lands. And there were plenty of traders who went into India. So, oh yeah, the mouth is watering over. So like this one here, this is a typical, if you were Spanish, you'd say, oh, that's an olla. It's a type of layered stew that gets baked forever, but you can see there's pomegranates on top. So my family in my house, we had pomegranates, but we had them as a snack after dinner. It was so funny because we would have, like I said, my household was so different growing up compared to my girlfriends. After dinner, we had Turkish coffee. I mean, I was a little kid and I'm drinking Turkish coffee, and my mother's turning the cup over and then reading our fortunes, with the coffee grounds. And we would have a big pomegranate and cut it up, and everybody would have a section. I mean, what family in the 50s were eating pomegranates? Americans, my mother made a romaine salad every night. Nobody knew about romaine salad back then. So this is also very Spanish. Every Spanish household will have this kind of huevos con tomate, and it's basically a really good tomato sauce with the eggs, cooked on top, but it's full of garlic and basil and wonderful. So you have those flavors, and then you have, all the stuffed things. This is up here, huevos hamanadas. It's across the board, whether, no matter what part of the world, every Sephardic knows what huevos hamanadas is. Basically a hard-boiled egg, but it's boiled in onion skins. So I'm like collecting all the onion skins, and putting them in the pot with a little bit of olive oil, and the eggs start out white, but they get these colored, beautiful, you can't see the skin on those, but the outside of the egg becomes mahogany, and the inside, it just has this very subtle onion aroma. They're really delicious, and that was a way of preserving things. Which came first, the bureka or the empanada? I think the bureka. Every time I see the empanadas, I'm laughing because they're eating Jewish food. Yeah, they don't know it. Even the Jamaican patty, this is Jewish food. So, and of course, this is the grape leaves. So, there's a lot of crossover between the cultures. So every Mideastern, it's not exactly Israeli food, but all the Israelis know all this food. It's not exactly only Greek. It's not exactly only Turkish. It's not exactly only Italian. All the Italians do this kind of, stuffed vegetable thing too. It's all of it together. But the spices will be different. So a Moroccan, Sephardic Jew, they're not necessarily Sephardic. It depends upon the family because they might have been there from before the Iberian Peninsula or Algiers, or if they're in Iran, they're cooking the same thing, but they're spicing it with different flavor. They're using mint and cardamom and all these other things. So the flavor, actual subtle flavor, changes from region to region. Yeah?
I love the subject of food, but I was curious about the character Shiloh in The Merchant of Venice. And what from where would he have taken that model?
Well, that was across the board because, Jews were not allowed to do this, not allowed to do this, not allowed to do this. What were they allowed to do? They were allowed to sell rags. They were allowed to change money because a Christian is not supposed to do that. And they were allowed to work with leather. Why? Because when those times they used urine to tan the leather. A Muslim would never touch urine. So tell me, when you think about leather goods, don't we think about the cowboys, and the saddles? Well, I have one lady, she has a whole lecture about the hidden Jewish symbols of the American cowboy. Forget John Wayne, it was a converso, the little Spanish guy, okay? Because they were still fleeing the Inquisition. The last auto de fe, which is the burning at the stake, was in 1851 in Mexico City. Think about that. In the 1800s, they were already working up electricity and stuff. It's like it was almost modern times, and they're still burning someone at the stake, not because they're Jewish, but because they're pretending to be Christian and secretly being Jewish. And so they were constantly running away and crossing the border. This Carvalho, he was one of the big explorers and captains or whatever, in Mexico. They went into Upper California and New Mexico because they were looking for the high ground. All these hidden converso communities that are starting to come out. I have a lady who's going to be doing a beautiful concert in January. She's going to be talking, her music is from the Puerto Rican conversos, which they were all in the mountains. And the same thing in Italy. They look for the mountainous areas so that they are hidden and they maintain their culture as much as they can. And what we're seeing today is with the DNA that you do have interesting, a certain number of people who are actually reclaiming their faith and converting. The film series that we're showing at West Palm Beach, the second one, A Long Journey, The Hidden Jews of the Southwest, follows a family that has made this big decision. And a lot of I don't know if you've heard of Jeannie Milgram, but she's out of Miami. And she has this incredible story. It's just so haunting. As a child, she just always felt drawn to her Jewish friends, and she was fascinated with Jewish stuff. She was Cuban Catholic, and long story short, it comes out that the family really was Jewish. So she decided she was going to trace it. She traced the maternal line of her family back 23 generations. So, she converted in a typical way, but she didn't actually have to do it because she was technically Jewish, having come through the, right. But she had all kinds of dreams and all kinds of mystical things that happened to her on her journey to becoming, to, connecting back. And she really feels like it's become her, not only her life passion, but that it's her purpose is to be a guiding light for anyone else who really wants to return.
Something that you just said triggered something in my mind. Has DNA testing allowed people to learn about Sephardic roots that they didn't know about? Has that helped to sort of...
So the DNA is based on the Kohan DNA, which a lot of it is Ashkenazi, but there is a Kohan line among the Sephardic. But the database has been growing over the decades, so there's more and more, aside from the person's name and, the customs of the home, and, things like that, we're able to more and more trace the background. I don't see what other slides I have here.
Can I ask,
Yeah, these are some of the desserts. And these are foods for the different. Now, go back to this one. Yes, I'm listening. I'm going to tell you about this one.
Well, while that slide is up, because it's related, in Palm Beach County, is there a restaurant that is affected by Sephardic cooking?
I would not say so. There's a ton of Israeli restaurants.
Yeah.
There's a ton of really good Greek restaurants. So when we get together and we want to do something, as a group, we generally go to a Greek, Turkish, or Israeli restaurant. We would be happy at an Italian restaurant too. But here and there are a few cooks, that you can buy things from. But otherwise, it's still made at home. And I'm still making all this stuff. So this is a bread that's supposed to be of the seven heavens, and it's part of some of the holidays. So this is our Rosh Hashanah plate, and every food is just like the Passover, Seder. It's all ritual because everything symbolizes things. And when you have the act of eating something that is imbued with a symbol, it's more, you feel it more. And so we have these symbolic foods for the new year, all kinds of, that things should be sweet, that things should be plentiful, that things should be green. And the fish head is so that you should always be the head of things, not following, but be the one in front, to live your life purposely, it's very interesting. So what else do we have here? So there's a lot of the kinds of architecture, and this is a very, very old, as you can see, Greek column. It has Hebrew, Arabic, and Ladino on it. So these are also some of the famous cities. And I think that we have one that's the American. The next slide. Well, this is the music. This is very, very much of a Bosnian group here. This is what Rashi looks like in Solitero.
This is such a layered culture. I was telling you earlier, but it's this idea of you've got Spanish mixed with Mediterranean, mixed with, it's just layer on top of layer on top of layer. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's all, which came first. It's like there was this exchange, this fabulous cultural exchange between Arab culture and the Sephardim, so that a lot of the Siddur, which is the book that you follow along when you're in a Jewish service, a lot of the pieces are like Psalms, they're the poetry. But a lot of the poetry comes from this period written by the scholars of the time, and they were influenced by Arabic poetry. So there's, okay, this is a personal story of one of our members. Let me see, come back. Yeah, this is the American page. So you have, there's the Newport and what's his name? Judah Toro, the Toro Synagogue. This is Emma Lazarus, who wrote the poem that's at the base of the Statue of Liberty. This is a Greek synagogue that's still running in the Village in New York City. It's a Greek. So there were Jews in Greece that did not come from Spain because they were descended from slaves, Roman slaves that had, the ships had, kind of like Australia, the ships had capsized and the slaves ended up, and so they stayed, their generations developed in Greece, and they spoke Greek, and they're called Romanots because of their Roman, right? So they don't speak Ladino, they speak Greek. But the food is the same. The food and the music, it's all this type of stuff. So yeah, this was the history that we've pretty much covered. Any other questions? Yes?
I'm not even sure I'm historically correct, but it seemed to me that I thought it was in Spain, this golden age.
Right, that's it.
Catholics, Muslims, and Jews all lived together.
Before the edict, because what happened, there was a period where they were all together. Oh, there was a period when they were all together, but then the persecution started, and there was just, I'm not sure where the pressure started, but it...
Do you think it was economic, or where would that have come from?
Well, okay, so going back to the Shylock story as well, is like I was saying, there were only certain things that they could do. So they were forced into the trades that were dirty, considered dirty. And so now you have the dirty Jew. He's selling rags. He's touching money. He's touching urine to make leather. Why is he doing this? Because you wouldn't let him do anything else, right? And so, but you have this native intelligence and this a kind of resolve to do the best that you can with what you have, because they're all, to be Jewish means that you're literate. You have to learn how to read, and write Hebrew in order to participate in the language. So there's an emphasis on education that didn't exist in other kinds of households, that this is part of where, the whole idea of them being so much smarter. It's really about
what was valued.
What was valued. Thank you. And so
there was also, just to sort of piggyback on that, there was also infighting amongst Christians that's happening around this time too, between a growing Protestantism that hasn't really sort of formulated its ideas yet, but is about to with Martin Luther, and Catholicism, and so these things politically, monarchies want to crack down on anything that's other than Catholicism, in this case with Spain, so that they can make sure that they centralize their power with their people, which is a lot of what the Inquisition is about.
And a little bit of what we were talking before is like, it's all about human nature, and what is the bottom line of human nature? There's got to be somebody that's worse than me, because then that means that I'm better than them. And so it just ends up being a very simple story of envy, jealousy, and greed. Because guess what happened when all those people left? It's the same thing like when my family had to leave everything behind in Yugoslavia, when all of those people were rounded up on the trains. They could only take their little thing. What did they leave behind? We're hearing all these stories now about the looted art. I mean, So it's the wealth. They had to leave behind their wealth. They had to leave behind their history, their generations, their vineyards, everything that they had cultivated. And something that you were saying before is that what we're seeing now is the backlash. Like, you know what? If you're going to press on me so hard, I'm going to push back even more. And we're seeing a tremendous interest, a revival of people going to Israel. It's like, if it's going to be so difficult for me to live in Paris, I might as well go to Israel where I can be someone openly, even though I still have to fight it, and so it's this pride and resolve to continue to, right. I have an aunt who said that one of the reasons she felt that there were so many, she felt that some Sephardim were able to survive the war better than others was because we had it built in of how to adapt, how to make the most, how to be resourceful, how to, oh, now I'm in a different country. Well, I'll learn the language. I'll put the clothes on. I'll be a, smart looking Italian, if I'm in Algiers. That's fine. Oh, now the state of Israel has been created and now they're kicking us all out. Well, that's fine. I'll go somewhere else and I will adapt. I'll still be me. I'll still maintain my identity because I know who I am. And it's very powerful. It's a very powerful thing that carries through generation after generation. And it's fun. So you can tell that I love my heritage. Someone asked me, what temple do I belong in? Well, the interesting thing is that I can separate for myself the love of God, the power of love, and my fabulous heritage, and not necessarily have to live an orthodox doctrine, So it's all about personal choice, and that is what's coming up at this time of year. It's about you're starting to come to a new year. It's a natural thing to look back and to think upon, what do I have to, forgive, ask everybody to forgive me for anything that I may have done wrong, and to pledge that I will be better. Because that's the thing, is that we always have the opportunity to be better.
Thank you so much.